because Facebook, it just does not want to do it. Oh, it's redirecting me live to YouTube. So we are now live on YouTube, and what I can do is drop that in to my page, and I will tag you. And see how that works. There we go. Okay,
I'm gonna grab my notes.
Okay.
Or no, it's okay. I just needed a notebook. Awesome.
Do you want to go get your notebook?
I have one right here I can use.
Okay.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Don't mind the cat in the background.
No, she's wonderful. I love the fact that you work with rescue animals. It shows your heart. So welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton Sehon from America, and she is going to speak to me today about her book, The Science of Miracles, Remembering the Frequency of Love. And you may have noticed, I posted one of her videos about holding the plumb line of love, and it's so relevant with what's happening in our communities and in our world right now. So I asked Dr. Sharnael to speak to us about family well-being, how to support our health, as in here in New Zealand, a lot of people are actually living in toxic homes with mold, and they don't seem to be aware of the damage that it does, and also the whole understanding regarding investing in well-being and living true, living authentic and congruent, and why it's important. So thank you, Dr. Sharnael.
Hey, first of all, thank you for having me. So excited to be working with you. I've known you for a little bit now and love your work.
Thank you.
I got into naturopathic medicine, well, I say medicine, support, I should say, because I was in a Western situation where I was kind of using a pill for every ill type situation. And that's a lot of the programming here with Big Pharma or Pharmakia, which actually means witchcraft. So interesting if you go look up that in the Strongs. But you know, I think it's pretty common for the average Joe and their upbringing to use pharmaceuticals for just whatever situation to avoid any kind of pain or what have you. And I'm not anti-pharmaceuticals by any means. I do suggest and love the fact that we have the opportunity just to make some good common choices on a regular day basis that don't have the side effects and that get to the root issue. Because what's the point of continuously working with all of the symptoms instead of getting to the root and fixing it, you know, from the inside out? And I have the analogy that I use quite a bit is if your car all of a sudden has a light that goes off for, let's say, the oil or what have you, and you're just chugging along and maybe it's beeping at you or flashing or what have you, you know, you can go see someone, and if that person doesn't really know what they're doing, they can be like, let's just make this so easy for you and like unplug the light and turn off the sound. And what's going to happen when you keep driving? It's not going to be a good outcome for you. And you haven't really done anything except for put a quote Band-Aid on it for a little while, and then you're still going to have issues up the road. So, and it could be worse issues because we are not typically taught to interpret symptoms or dis-ease as a message, when in all reality, when something's going on with your body, this is a message that there is something going on at a deeper level that's ready to be transmuted. It's coming up for us to love and to move it out. This is our frontal lobe, and right behind that is our limbic system. And what happens is anytime that we're in a situation where we're faced with trauma or something sudden out of nowhere, or something with an authority figure that we're not able to like defrag time is usually 3 to 5 a.m. You know, if we're not even sleeping during that time, we're not doing a lot of defragging. So what happens is if the defrag doesn't happen, whether it's like just too much for you, or you're not sleeping, or it's too repetitive and the same thing happens over and over again, then the limbic system is like the librarian of your body. And it basically says, you know what, she cannot deal, and or he cannot deal. And so what we're going to do is we're going to help her out. We're just going to put this on a shelf, and that shelf can look like an organ, muscle somewhere, and it just takes it and puts it somewhere until you're able to process. Now it could sit there for months, it could sit there for weeks, it could sit there for decades. You could actually be born into some limbic issue storage things going on with your DNA right from the get-go, like right out when you're born in the matrix. You know, you can already have a DNA set to some things that happened to grandma, grandpa, and all the way back, and then wait for the symptoms to happen. It doesn't mean that you necessarily did anything, but if it's yours to show up when it shows up, that means it's yours to deal with, and it's yours to transmute. And it's an opportunity to transmute. Epigenetics is real, and we can move those things out and shift the income and the outcome to have a better situation, and pain-free, and it's permanent. It's not something that's like, oh, let me just fix this until. I mean, we have the opportunity now with all the technology to move things out and shift the DNA from the get-go, and not only avoid any future issues with ourselves, but if you tend to have, if you're a younger person who's in the stages of, you know, giving birth and having babies and continuing in the generations, you can set your DNA up to already be cleaned from that before you actually reproduce, so you're not reproducing that into your children. So that's where we are.
That is so true, and I love that. I went through a health challenge myself recently, and I just pulled everything in for 5 weeks and did the inner work and listened to the body and did the upgrade and remembered my love and changed my language. And one of the things I loved in the chapters, you were talking about Dr. Lucky and emotional purgatory, and just how our body records all our words, and that just stayed with me. And I was amazed. I had flashbacks, but just everything that came forward, I could stay, love it, and upgrade it and let it go. So by the time I went forward to have, you know, my treatment as such, I was full of gratitude. I was completely in a different place, and it was the end of a very long season and chapter, and it was such a great benefit. So what would you say about emotional purgatory for people who've never heard that term before?
So good question. Emotional purgatory and physical purgatory, we can be locked into patterns based on our word, our expectation, and our biofield. We all have a biofield, usually about 5, 6 feet, 8 feet-ish, depending on the person. And bio meaning two, it's called biofield because it's both radiating out, but it's also magnetizing back in. So it's doing 2 different things at once. And what the biofield is a collective of is all of the things we're thinking about, talking about, and even more so feeling. Your feeling world and what your heart pumps out. This is the biggest generator of the biofield at large. A lot of people think it's the brain, and the brain is very, you know, a big one for sure as far as generating code and outcome. But the heart is 100 times more sufficient and generating code out there. And so some people have actually been known and tested and measured by sight, being able to read people's biofields, whether it's color, numbers, all kinds of things that are going on in there, especially younger. The younger you are, we've seen a lot of talent in young people who are able to see into those realms. We don't necessarily see it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist any more than if you plug in a radio or you have electricity going on in your house. It doesn't mean that there aren't waves going on all right here with Wi-Fi, radio, whatever. It's about tuning in, and your biofield captures all of that, and can be dismantled and or encouraged or supported or depleted from all of those things too. So having EMF protection and that kind of thing is really, really important, and just making sure your biofield is very clear. Now, going back to your question, what you think about, talk about, and what you feel, and your DNA actually has a signature code that goes out in through the body also to your biofield. And this biofield, again, is going to represent all of those things, including your DNA. So if you will have a signature link that I won't have. It's like an imprint, a thumbprint. But in addition to, again, it's about what's going on here, what we're talking about, and what we're feeling. So why is programming and the media such a big deal right now? Because when media is out there, that all of the media on television, radio, what have you, that's all going in through beta waves, which is brain energy, brain waves, and that's the fight or flight arena. And so they're trespassing, and or I guess, who knows if it's considered trespassing, but they're not going in on something that's going to be specifically helpful and supportive as much as it is driving more fear, sending more attention and stress to the adrenals. And especially because of the pictures, the words, and all of that as a collective are very fear-based. And so words matter, thoughts matter, images are big, and an image can speak 1,000 words. And they've done all kinds of tests at the Noetic Institute where they flashed pictures up on screens, and people would actually have a response before the picture went up, whether it was good or bad. The body could already anticipate what was about to happen. How is that with they're not even seeing something visual? It's because it's all collected on an empath note of just knowing, and we got to pay attention that way. Again, we're not always taught in most communities to pay attention to feeling or what could come up, or that signature feeling that you're, as a receptor, as an antenna, whether it's going in or coming out, what you're feeling is really, really important. Matter of fact, in some organizations, I'm not going to name, some programming would tell you don't feel, don't think about your feelings. The feelings are just opinions, they go away. No, feelings are trump. Feelings are very important, because what you're feeling actually sends out signals that create and modify your biofield. And so when, I look at scripture as quantum physics, and it's very alive, and there's a lot to it. There's quite a bit missing, but there's a lot to it. And some of the things that come to mind is casting down imaginations that don't line up with Christ consciousness, and think on these things that are lovely, things that are good report, that kind of stuff, because there is a lot of truth. And equations don't lie, code doesn't lie. When we and there's so much technology now that supports what I'm telling you. You can go, there's so many different, so much technology that can support what it looks like when we're talking, what it looks like when we're thinking, what it looks like when we're feeling, and they can measure all of that. And it looks really, really dark and it's negative, and it looks really, really light and happy and joyful when it's positive. You can even test the water. It's measurable in the water, how water reacts, how plants respond, how animals respond, based on the vibration and the frequency of what's going on inside your body. And that can be done remote. It doesn't have to be tested within your body. That can be done remote. And what's his name? Clive Baxter actually worked with plants and lie detectors, and he tested plants 40 miles away, talking to plants 40 miles away, all hooked up to lie detectors, to see what would happen if he was in his car 40 miles away, talking to specific plants who are all 40 miles away. And at the moment that he would log in over and over and over, when he would talk about different things, good or bad, then the plants would respond 40 miles away. I mean, if you can go into this whole, like, trees talk to each other, dogs talk to each other, there's a whole network of frequency and interaction that goes on a frequency level. But, just because we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So going back again to what, and this is a long answer, I apologize, but I don't, but I do. So how do we shift it? Yes. So how do we shift it? How do we get out of purgatory? you shift what you're thinking about, you shift what you're talking about, you shift what you're feeling. It takes practice for some people. Some people it's not so difficult, and you know, but a thought is a very quick thing to do, and training yourself and getting trained into training will actually change the brain waves, which changes the biofield, which you know, if usually what you're thinking about, you're talking about. So if you could focus on what you're thinking on and have the Christ consciousness of what would Christ think, you know, what would he think, and thinking the best about everybody instead of the worst, or seeing the big picture and things instead of the worst case scenario, like we've been programmed in the past. And most people, a lot of people have come up in those programs, whether it's, you know, they could have the perfectly clean family where everything was hunky-dory and rose-colored glasses, but you start television from an early age, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, all the stuff that's there now, Facebook, and you can amplify all of those things, and you'll start to see there's a brainwashing that goes on here, very subtle and very real, and that's a whole nother subject. But people will start to have ideas that are not their own, and then what they do, or what they can do, and what they are doing is they're using our feelings, our words, and our thoughts to actually create a reality that they wanted to anyway, without having to do it themselves. They can use all of us to create the outcome that they wanted without having to force the outcome that they really want.
Yes, so it's harnessing that creative consciousness, isn't it, and the energy. And I agree with what you were saying. I noticed out walking, I could see a woman with her dog, and her dog's reacting because the dog was carrying all the stress of the woman, and she'd been tuned into that whole media fear diet. So instead of being outside her premises and enjoying the beautiful blue sky and the fresh air, she was internally locked up. And I agree with you also. I had an experience recently having a conversation, and that defragging time at 3 a.m. I woke up, and the energy of fear and anxiety literally walked into the room, and I had to consciously be aware to break agreement and not receive a seed of doubt that was getting planted. Even though it could have been a reality, I got to recode it. So invaluable keys, what you're sharing.
Yes, there's a science to it, and if we are awake and willing, that's important, not just to know about something, but to take action about what you know. Those are two different things. And so you have three different people. You have one person who doesn't know anything, and or knows everything. You have another person who knows something and does something about it, or is aware of it and does something about it, and the other person who knows something and won't have the courage to do something about it. So it's not just about knowing and being aware. It's about actually taking action, because faith without works is dead. And when we, you know, there's a lot of opportunities right now on the planet for people to start really taking action if you haven't been taking action already. And all the timelines are depending on this right now. I mean, there's a timeline agenda right now. And if we are not careful, then things are going to go a whole different way. And it is a collective. It's important that we as a collective find unity in each other as much as possible. And it's happening. There are people, as much as things are crazy right now, people are finding each other and collaborating and working together. And bit by bit by bit by bit, that energy is shifting.
Yes, agreed. And you made it so simple in Science of Miracles. You took key concept and laid them out with practical applications. And I loved your little diagrams because I'm very visual and I could piece it together. But the other thing too is I love the collective energy of being part of Team Swiftfire International. It's a global community, over 7,000 like-minded people, and I've just learned so much being there. And then the other one you have is the divine science and the human body, and that's been revolutionized because there are so many healing modalities, but it was also coming out of the program of fear, you know, that everything in the light is actually serving our highest good. And I love the way that you educate to empower, and this awakening that's happening really does seem to be about the power of choice and activating our sovereign will. So
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, very important. And yes, we have about 40,000 on the email list. I know, like for Team Swiftfire, I know that one of our groups is about 7,000, but the actual amount of people is about 15,000. And then different platforms all over, a lot of them don't cross over. So I don't have a real number on how many people are in the community, but several of them are 20,000 here, 30,000 here, 40,000 here. And I don't know how much of those cross over, because there are people on Instagram who don't do Twitter, and Twitter who don't do this, and email. I know I don't email, but there's 40,000 of y'all who are in our group that email. So, you know, I'm just doing my best, and what I feel is really crucial, especially in this moment, to get out there. And since I'm saying that, because of censorship and all the different strikes, I've had several strikes at this point, and actually was given Facebook jail a few times. So if you're not already on my email list, that's probably the best way to get me to be able to stay connected, for going that, God forbid anything happens to any of these other platforms. I'd love to stay connected with you guys and be able to keep the connection, or at least tell you where I am if we have to start over or do something different.
Oh, definitely. And you're an ordained minister, so you're used to being on the circuit. You've spoken in various circles. And the other thing too is you're a real forerunner, and you've pioneered so much, and you've left steps that we can follow. So there's an acceleration to the process. Like, you know, you spent hours of investing in online university and free classes, which are available through Team Swiftfire. But I just wanted to, for those that are thinking to step into what is emerging, and I know there are older generation that are very concerned about the mixture of language with science and quantum physics and things like that. But in your book, I think it was chapter 18, you talked about having an encounter where you saw records and books. So will you just open that up, and maybe also give a key tip for those that really want to be involved and run with what they feel the spirit is saying right now?
Yeah, great question too. Back in 2009, I believe it was, towards the end of 2009-ish, fall of 2009, I had an encounter. You know, choose to understand and know 100%. All I know is I walked into my living room, and there were two ginormous iridescent beings of light that were in my living room, and there were books everywhere, stacked very high. There was bookshelves, there's desks with books, one desk with books, and I was surprised, is one way to say it. I felt it on a cellular level, all the way to my inner core being of each cell. Was very heightened and like, you know, frightened, I guess would be a good word. And I instantly, everything I thought, they could know what I was thinking and talked back all completely via thought. And one of them went behind the desk and opened up one of these ancient desks. I mean, ancient books. There were books everywhere, and they were big, fat, looked very ancient. And when they would open it up, there were records and records of names, and what people were healed of, or what health crisis they were going through, and then how they were fixed, and the date. And it was just records. I mean, books and books and books and books and books. And at that point, I had just come out of my own personal healing crisis, or opportunity, I should say. There's been a couple for me. And when that happened, I remember I was on the verge. I was in ministry at the time, and I had been to 30-something countries all over, speaking at conferences almost every weekend for that, up to that point. I started in the late 90s, and this was a decade in of mostly doing conferences that were specifically driven for spirit, and had not really thought about going into anything outside of that, and definitely not anything medical at that point. But when I saw, I'm gonna cry. But when that happened, it affected me at such a cellular level. I just knew, like, I have to be a part of this somehow. And I knew that what I had done for that last decade of seeing people and prayer lines and, all of the existing conditions that people were aware of. I believe in miracles because of energy. I believe in instant miracles. I believe in therapeutic miracles, meaning from the word therapeuto, comes from therapy. Therapeo, which comes from therapy, meaning making choices over time and seeing a different results. Like, that's where the word therapy comes from. And I had seen people get miracles over that decade, but I'd also seen people who got their miracles and then went back to their regular normal habits and lifestyle and found themselves right back. And no judgment. It's just part of the programming and part of the American lifestyle and or world lifestyle now, because it's all over Europe and everywhere else that I've ever been to and it didn't used to be like that. I lived in Europe as a kid, and if you saw a fat person, you knew it was an American, not to be judgmental. And same thing with Australia, England, all the places that I went to, even traveling as a small child, Amsterdam, Denmark, Norway, you could spot an American. And now when you go, you can't tell the difference. I mean, there's McDonald's everywhere, and no judgment against McDonald's, but the programming and the lifestyle and the ease of getting something quick, that's you don't have to prepare, and that is full of MSG and all the things, and the way that food has been grown, soda, candy at every store. I mean, you could go to an office management place and they're going to have a whole aisle of candy. Go to Old Navy, a clothing store, and there's a whole aisle of candy. Like, why is candy in a clothing store? Why is candy in an office supply store? Candy is at Home Depot. I mean, you can go anywhere and buy loads of candy, because why? Americans will buy it. And so will other people across the United States, across the world. And so there's this, sugar is not your friend, and carbs aren't necessarily the best answer either. And then, couple that with the food that we do eat, not having the enzymes and the proper minerals that it used to, and the hustle bustle of everyone having 2 or 3 or 5 jobs and just trying to make it. And so you're hustling to try to do everything and get dinner on the table. And sometimes it's financial, where, this is cheaper to get top ramen than, buy a nice dinner at wherever, or cook a nice dinner or whatever. Or at least that's the facade of what, whether, whatever, you can grow it and it's cheaper, to be honest. But so there's all different things that go into play with that. And when I had that encounter, wow, every time I talk about it, I get emotional again. I knew that for me, I had to do something different than what I had been doing up to that point. And I had already made those changes for me personally, and I had been doing that for about a year, but I had not gone public with any of that, nor had I started teaching what I knew, nor had I gone back to school, because it seemed a little bit strange to just go up and get your doctorate at the age that I was. I was in my mid-30s, and I was just like, let's go back to school and learn how to be a doctor, a naturopathic doctor. That takes a lot of time, a little bit of an investment for sure. I had small children and I was single at the time, so it was just, it's a lot. And when I asked and said, is this really you, God? Are you asking me to go back to school? I was on a plane and I was heading, this direction, whatever direction that is. I was heading, the plane was moving forward, and I literally thought to myself, are you really wanting me to do this? And this is later, after the encounter. And I looked out the window and I saw those, there's like these plastic deals that they have on the tarmac. And sometimes they're like AE that way, or BC this way, or 123 that way. And it said ND that way. And the direction that I was going, I was like, oh my God. So the next thing you know, I'm going back to school. And every intention that I had to go back to school was because I was so bombarded with emails and all the social media platforms of people seeing me before and after and hearing my story. And they were saying, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And they all had their version of what they were going through and what their opportunity was. And I didn't know the answers. And I felt sad that I didn't know how to help them. And I felt obligated and responsible to train and to know and to go learn this information. So when people asked me, I would have answers and I could help them get their solution and their victory and their health. And because you know what, it doesn't matter what your purpose is or what your dreams are or what your born mission is. If you're laid up sick, at the very least, and or uncomfortable with the everyday life. I mean, some people go every day with pain. I know I did. And that is not an easy thing to accomplish when you don't feel well and you still have 5 kids to figure out and your job to make a living and all, you know, all the things that are just a part of normal. Not even mentioning relationships or enjoying being outside or playing with your dog or whatever, you know, or just the freedom to paint or to dance or to write or having the energy to do any of those things. And, you know, I don't personally believe that we were sent here to be sick all day. What kind of life is that? That's not thriving. It's not even, it's barely surviving. And so I did go back to school. And again, I did it for just me and being able to answer my little small amount of people at that time on the planet. And then it turned into people started asking me to come speak at wellness conferences, which really, like the first couple that I got in invitations, I turned them down because I was like, no, I'm not going there. I would feel awkward. I don't know what to say. I don't really have credibility. No one's going to listen to me. You know, what if I accidentally say God because you know, because of my belief system. It was a fine line to cross for me and mentally. It's just my own programming of like, oh no, that's not what I do, you know. But then I was like, what am I doing? Why not? Like this, if I could help anyone, that's what this is about, no matter where it is or whose conference it is. If it's helping people, great. And so I went to my first wellness conference in Michigan and spoke as a naturopathic doctor with other medical people on the platform. And it was one of the most powerful meetings that I can, those two beings showed up in the back.
Awesome.
Wow. And I just stood there and I could see them and it was like their little winky wink, like you're doing it. This is good. And, you know, all of us have that opportunity. All of us have the opportunity to live true. Speaking of true, that's what I call one of them. Because when the encounter happened, right at the end, you know, when I saw the names and I saw what was going on, they must have known, they knew what I was thinking. And one of them said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to be a part of that." And then they closed the book and one of them looked really serious at me and said, "Okay." And I just knew, okay. And then she pointed her finger at me and she said, "Tell them they're not truly living unless they're living true." And when she said that, it literally went through and still does. I still feel it. It's just it was so powerful. It was one of the most powerful things that have ever shifted my life as far as that kind of encounter. And it literally changed my whole world. And and my whole audience and my whole life and my whole physical body, my biofield, I'm sure, shifted. And I knew when she said they're not truly living unless they're living true, that became my message.
And I loved the way it widened and expanded your whole world, your whole audience, you know, who heard your message and received it, but it must have completely shifted your beliefs and your paradigms.
I did. It was the beginning of a brand new path for me. And also I knew the depth, and I'm still remembering the depth of what that means, to live true. Because when they said that, it didn't mean like, hey, does my hair look okay? Like telling the truth versus a white lie, or do these jeans look good on me? Kind of like tell the truth or a white lie. I meant, I knew that that meant living true is who you're with, what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're thinking, what your job is, who you're partnered with in business and or relationships, how you spend your money, what you're eating and drinking, what you're not eating and drinking. You know, every minute of every day, we have the opportunity to live true. And you could go in and out of that. You could be like true and then not, and true and not, and we could zigzag, or we can stay. And that's why I wrote the book, is because it gives us the opportunity to not just stay true who is love and who is a person. And I'm not saying, when I say is a person, I don't necessarily just mean this being. True is my nickname for whoever this lady is, but God is true. God is the truth source. And God is the epitome of truth and love. And that is the highest frequency. And that has become my message of just, you know, stop comparing, stop trying to compete, stop trying to be like everyone else, like be you in your best version, because we require you on the planet with your peace. And health is a big part of that, because if we're not taking care of ourselves on a physical level, on a spiritual level, on a even social media level, hygiene, then you know, we can go through all the levels of what truth looks like. And also we're continuously bombarded and or given the opportunity at will, free will, to make the choices. And every choice that we make, there is a code to that. There is a formula, and the formula will show up in your biofield, and you only get a match to what you are, because you're radiating out, and then also it magnetizes back in. So if you don't like your outcome right now, if you don't like the patterns that you're seeing, think something else, do something else, feel something else, talk about something else, and shift the epigenetics at the DNA level, which can be by thinking, feeling, and talking about, but also on a nutritional level, we can change the epigenetics. And on a frequency level, we can change the epigenetics. So there's so many different things, whether it's technology, essential oils, supplements, exercise, breath is really important, meditation, prayer, being mindful, you know, nature. There's so much code in nature and sunshine. My book is packed with all of this stuff, and I think you'll enjoy it. Even crystals, which, you know, was a little bit taboo for me at the beginning, and the more I'm learning and studying Tesla and all of these things that really should be declassified, and I can't wait until a certain president gets able to do that, and we'll have med beds and all these other things, because they've offed Royal Rife and you know, all the people that have done anything to actually create a world where we can have high frequency in an instant, you know, 20 minutes and cancer's gone. You know, those are the kind of things that should have been made available to us in the 40s or maybe even the 30s, that have been held back from us. And I wonder why. I wonder if it has anything to do with money, but that's just a thing, right?
And that's why it's so wonderful with the awareness, because I love the way you use decrees and aligned statements and you're also a student of conscious language, and that's just made such a difference for me. It's amazing. And has this been the passion behind your launch of True TV?
Yes. So, as I said before, my life up till 2015 was pretty much being gone every Thursday to Sunday. In some city or multiple cities, states, countries, sometimes 2 or 3 in a weekend, just hopping on planes and going to the next place and speaking to large audiences, because I love consultations and I do one-on-one consultations, but I much prefer, I feel called to the masses as much as possible, because if I can shift, 5,000 people in a meeting, then how many people are those people going to affect, and so on and so on. And in 2015 had some things going on, beginning in 2016, end of 2015, that little time period, there were some things where I was like, okay, I need to recollect myself again and go back to some basics with some stuff with my health, and had some things surface that had maybe lodged for a while, and they were coming out of dormancy and surfacing for me to transmute on my own. And so it took some time to really, really dig deep and use all the modalities that are available, and really, really hone down on nutrition, like hardcore, and exercise, and all the things. And then that really changed my travel time to maybe once a month or twice a month. And I was doing that for a while too. And then of course, this February, March, we had, in 2020 had this stuff with the lockdown. So I haven't traveled too much of anywhere unless I was driving. And so it for me, it shifted gears big time, because I still felt this credible mandate to get the education out and to train as many people as possible, and to awaken as many, and to ignite as many to truth and love, and also realize their choices and their power. And if I wasn't on a plane doing that, or people were too afraid to even show up, then that's going to be an issue. So we launched True TV, and I've just been, I'll do like 5 or 6 interviews a week, sometimes with myself, sometimes me interviewing other people, just whatever. And I have found some amazing opportunities to connect and collaborate with other people who don't even necessarily think the same way I do in some places. There's things that we connect on, and some things that are kind of out there, and there's things that I kind of have to go, I'm not really sure about that, but but the baseline unity is people are looking, the people that I'm interviewing are all hoping and seeking truth, love, union, and something to change and shift on the planet, where whatever that is, or however that is. I don't look at what they do as a profession. I don't look at their language necessarily, if they use a different word than I would, or whatever. I'm focusing on what is their impact on the planet, as far as, is it a positive one, or is it something that isn't going to work? And so some of these people I've become very familiar with and really love and enjoy, and I still don't necessarily believe 100% of everything they do or not, and I don't really care. I'm not here to judge or to say you should do this or you shouldn't do that, as much as I am to say, what do we agree on? What do you know? What's your intel? How can we work together? And how can we ignite as many people as possible to shift this world?
Exactly. And that's the stewardship of the books that you were entrusted with, the records. And I love that. I love that, because it's framing up a positive outcome for the future generations. And I really think that's what it's about right now. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, and there's some people who are like, oh my God, they're not a Christian or whatever. And like, what is the word Christian? It means to follow Christ. How do you follow something that is already in your DNA? It's like, so I don't care what their spiritual situation is. What I care about is what is their integrity? What is their character? Are they loving? Are they kind? And do they have any intel or things that they can contribute to our people to maybe turn on some lights and help people go a little bit further in their walk and in their own awareness and their own consciousness to be their best version of themselves wherever they are. And so that's been very interesting, and it's also been one of the most fulfilling things that I've done in a long time. It's just been so cool that all of these people are collectively coming together and saying, you know what, I don't have to go anywhere, we can do this right here. People want to use the internet for something bad, guess what, we're going to use it for something good.
Exactly. And it's divine flow. You know, technology is a blessing. And I love what you're doing. That's part of what I do at Heartworks. And I've seen in the past, people actually live with inner torment. You know, they're double-minded, those parasites, and they have corrupt viruses that are actually affecting them, and they end up in mental or emotional illness because of wrong belief systems. And so it's like this reset, reboot, and to hear the truth, because we resonate with what is true and it contains life. And I love that. You know, you're recognized when people hear you, they say they see love in your eyes and they know that you have integrity. So you are oozing into your biofield who you are. And I just want to thank you for that.
Awesome. And I feel the same about you. From the minute that we did our first interview, a year ago, and I met you a long time ago, I can feel and sense through language and body language and sound when I meet another awakened being. And I love what you're doing. I love your leadership. I love that you're working in your sphere and your community to do your part, which is all anyone's ever asking. And because obviously I don't live where you do. I'm not there every day. Everyone's got to be in their position doing what they're, you know, there's a frequency to authenticity. And when we're living true, that is a sound that can be recognized and heard and felt right at a cellular level. And you have that. And anyone who's been working with you, I know that they know that too. And I just appreciate that. And that's an opportunity for all of us at any time. And so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And on that note, we are a global community now. You know, this literally is such an awakening and an opportunity. So I just want to welcome the listeners, those watching who may think, oh, I live in the Netherlands, or I'm in Switzerland, or I'm in Germany. You literally can join us and, you know, come and be part of this wellness movement and get connected with like-minded, high energy, vibing people. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to go and train to be a doctor, but those resources are available. And the pollination, they're like gems. So thank you so much for your time. And it's swiftfire.org. Is that correct?
Yes. And going back to the training,
yes,
I have invested about $20,000 in videos and training that's specific to those members. And so when you become a member, you also get connected to all of that I've sent up. Because what I did and how I even got the training is working one-on-one with people. I was starting to see patterns of, you know, issues and dis-ease and or patterns of emotional things, or patterns of, you know, always getting the same stupid boyfriend or figure, or you know, having issues with money, or things dropping out at the last minute, or not being able to get it, you know, all the, whatever the pattern. And as I work with people over and over again, I realized this is a bigger theme or story or testimony than this one person, because now I have 15 people this week that all had that same thing. So instead of working one-on-one, I thought, well, if these people are dealing with it, there's probably more. And I would make a video on it and I would explain what to do and what protocols to take. And then I would upload it. And then the next thing would come, or if someone would have a question, or if I start to see a theme in another area, I would do another, and I would just keep doing that. And so now we have a collective Swiftfire University where, you know, if anyone asks a question, you go like, oh, go look in the alphabetical thing and go find the video on that, and you could get your protocol.
Yes, and it's brilliant. I've used it myself and I love it. And so people literally, you can come, you can join through me, get connected with Team Swiftfire. Sharnael Wolverton is the leader. She's the founder. So we come in under the umbrella. You know that the energy is good. You've heard the heart intention, so you can align and agree. And we really want to partner with the well-being of our planet and with our people. You know, it's time to evolve and change. We don't have to hide behind walls any longer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very, very good. So thank you for your time. And True TV, sign up. You're going to get these amazing bite chunks information. And I know there'll be new technologies unfolding. So I'm going to end the YouTube. And Sharnael, if we just stay connected for a moment, and then we'll sign off. So
Thank you so much. Thank you again.